I got the tractor a few years later. I got a tractor on a barter deal. I was working a project with a guy that ran out of funding, but he had a tractor. And so I never really planned on buying a tractor, but I kind of acquired that one. And I didn't really plan on keeping it as long as I did, but it worked. And then about 9 years ago, I found this tractor and got this one, which is a lot more comfortable and better gas mileage and things like that. Right. I probably wouldn't have ever bought a tractor though. We were renting tractors. We rented tractors for the first 7 or 8 years. Right. And that worked for me. It was a bit of a hassle, right, but luckily I had a couple different companies that I could rent from. And
whatever happened to the old bus?
The bus, once we finished this unit, I had both units here. There's a picture in there of both units parked side by side. Right. And a friend of mine out of Nashville that I'd known for a number of years, that was a musician, lived in Nashville, and we had done jobs with the bus together. And so that summer, the truck was finished and the bus was sitting here. I took the truck out to the NAB show in Vegas because all the equipment I had at the time was MCI, and Sony had just purchased MCI. So Sony came to me and said, "We know you built this truck. We want to spotlight it at the NAB convention." So we took the truck out to NAB. And while I was out there, I bumped into the Smithsonian people, and they said, "You know, we would love to record the summer festival in DC that we do every year with the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. And we know you got the bus, and that would be perfect." So they basically paid for me to take the bus up for the summer in the Smithsonian. And this friend of mine in Nashville had moved to that area. He lived up in Maryland. So we just kept the bus in Maryland. And a lot of the clients that I'd been doing, DIR clients and other clients that had flown down here and used the bus, were perfectly happy to use the bus on the East Coast. So we just picked up a whole different clients. Yeah. And we ran 2 mobile locations for about 7 or 8 years. And Dave ended up moving back to Nashville. We moved the bus back to Nashville. We continued to do projects there. And then it just got to the point that it was hard to find parts. It was a 1948 bus, and it was 1988 when we were using it. And you know, parts were really getting difficult to find. Luckily, it was in Nashville, and a lot of bus companies were based in Nashville, a lot of coach companies. And a lot of them had flexibles as their coach line. So we were able to find parts, but one job we did with it in Memphis, I remember we had a throwout bearing go out on the bus, and we got stalled in Memphis, and we could not find a throwout bearing anywhere. And we had to end up towing it back to Nashville. And so it sat in Dave's backyard for about 1.5 years, and one day, a guy called from a bus company, and he said, "Are you still looking for that throwout bearing for that 1948 Flex?" And Dave said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I found one. It was sitting in this box, brand new. It's only like $20. If you'll bring the bus in, we'll put it in for you for like, $250 or something." So we got the bus running. But because of that, we just never felt real good about taking it out on the road again. So we did some local things for a number of years. And then finally, Dave just parked it in his backyard and bought the equipment, and I just let him keep the bus, and that was his studio. He had a nice basement, and he cut a lot of record projects, and it just sat there. And then about 8 years ago, we decided that we wanted to sell the bus. And I said, there's no reason for that thing just to go to waste. It's just sitting in your backyard with vines growing over it, He would go out and crank it like once a week, just make sure it still ran. And so he had a guy come visit him one day that was a Harley enthusiast, and he wanted to buy the bus and put a trailer on the back of it and haul his Harleys around and go to shows. And that's what they did. They came and Dave took all the equipment out. Right. The guy came in one day with his Harley friends. They cranked it up and they took off and were never to be seen again. and so Dave still got all the equipment in Nashville in his basement studio. But that was kind of That was kind of the end of that era. We both had fond memories of the bus because we had recorded a lot of shows together, and you know, he had it longer than I had it. He got it in about 1980, right after we built the truck, which was like 82, 83. It left Texas and it never came back. So, and he
bus at the Broken Smoke.
Yeah, it could have been that. You know, we always talked about what to do with it, but it's still living on, I guess, as a Harley Davidson vehicle.
That's wild. Thank you for sharing all that.
Are we missing some people this evening?
Why you need to sit back there?
We're going to scoot Mike over a little bit then, because very well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
When you slip it on the 451 on the hi-hat, leave a little gap around there.
Okay.
And go ahead and do that as soon as you go in.
Okay. Tell him I'm just going to walk in there and do it.
Yeah, Carl's just going to go ahead and put the pop on the 451. He's coming in with it. Putting out trash while it's sitting there in the stable mode, but it's just popping and clicking. Was that the thing full of adapters?
Yeah.
Did he have a mini plug and then it goes into more adapters, or what was it exactly?
It goes from a mini into a mini to quarter-inch adapter.
Coming out of the computer?
Yeah.
Good grief.
So it's mini coming out.
So where is it?
Okay, you need to go to the drummer and we need to talk to him. This is his drum machine. Something's wrong with it.
Is
And it may be a
I'm
connector.
hearing something.
Huh?
I'm hearing something popping quick in the house.
Yeah. Well, they shouldn't have it up because it's only reference.
Yeah, thank you.
The church applause, all right? Y'all ready? A medium applause on 3. 1, 2, 3.
When the low seems hard to bear, everybody else's dark days just seems to rain. I don't care what you're going through, I got something to encourage you. No matter what it looks like, no matter what you feel like.
Turn up the lights up here, please, Carl.
Malcolm, they want to know if they can go.
Not yet.
Back to this truck. Once this truck got on the road, there was really no reason to have another mobile unit in town.
Because you could go anywhere.
Yeah, because I could do it, and this was the truck I was trying to premiere, and there was enough work to do it that way. I'd say nowadays, if I'd probably kept the bus, I would probably could find more work today for the bus than the truck because it was small, it was easy to get in and out of places, and with the congestion of just doing business nowadays, plus fuel economy, it got good mileage. Wow. And you know, I guess maybe I should have built the truck first and then found the bus. I don't know. But this was the unit we wanted to you know, spotlight. And so it just kind of, you know, it went from there. I mean, my business in the 80s, a lot of it was radio syndication work. We were doing work for King Biscuit for DIR, Westwood One, out of California. and they had a truck out there, but we would do a lot of work here just because it was easier to fly in and use us, and a lot of the equipment was identical. They had an MCI console like mine. The machines were similar. We were both in big vehicles.
24 track at that
Yeah, we were dual 24 track at that time. We didn't do a lot of lockup 48 track. I bought the equipment and I did do some, but most of the live work until I started doing digital stayed 24 track. It just made more sense, and that's what we worked with.
So you were doing both the audio recording and then going with video support?
Yeah, we would do video support for broadcast. I never really got into the video actual work. I just felt like that I wanted to pretty much specialize in audio, and that's the way we kept it.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, I really saw the drift toward more video, and that's when the radio syndication work almost dried up and was gone by the mid 90s. People were just not doing radio shows anymore, but the live video to go with it was what was happening. And so the truck worked well for that. You know, we just really made the transition. In the early 90s, I bought my first digital machines, which were the Sony PCM 800s. They were like the D88s. And I found that to be a real good format. I'd looked at ADAT, I'd looked at some other formats, and that format seemed to be a little more stable and a little bit more video friendly, because you could actually record time code on a separate track. And that seemed to be what the film people, the video people were going. And so we kept our analog machines. You know, we still did some analog, but the 800 dig machines became the thing, and 48 track really became the thing. We would do analog, but we'd always do the dig format.
When did you finally let go of your analog machine?
I just sold them 6 months ago.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I hung on to them for quite a while because we had a couple of clients that wanted analog. They wanted an analog desk, and they wanted analog, you know, through the entire chain. And I bought these machines, or the radar format I ended up going with. I kept the Sonys, the PCM 800s, as a backup, and then I bought radars. And I finally bought more radars when I retired the 800s. It just got to the point it was really getting difficult to find high 8 tape. It had to be formatted. It was a hassle. You know, I mean, if you dealt with ADATs or any of that format, having 6 little tapes to keep up with and label them, and you know, just got to the point that hard disk became the format. And I had seen radar back in the early 90s, because this company came out about the same time Pro Tools did, with a hard disk system. They actually came out with multi-track when Pro Tools was still just doing 2 and 4 track. And they were based out of Canada, and then they did a licensing agreement with Otari. And Otari was a distributor for radar for about 10 years. And in about 2000, I think that contract expired, and that's when IZ was finally to the point that they got the funding and the distribution. They had a name already established. And they had come out with a new series, which was the Radar 24. Which could do higher sample rates. They came out with the better converters. They could do 4896, 192, multi-track. They could do, you know, 100 some odd channels. They could lock up 100 channels of 192 kilohertz and record as long as the hard drive would last. And nobody was able to do that. And so I really went with that format because I wanted something that was a lot like an analog machine, that it wouldn't be a huge learning curve, but I wanted something that was a hard disk system and sounded good. And this was the format that I ended up going with. And we did a lot of A/B comparisons between you know, other formats. And I ended up buying 2 machines to get started. And I bought the machines that would do 96. I thought there might be a real trend towards more 96 kilohertz, although it really hasn't changed, and there's really not all that much work. I do some 96 kilohertz work, but nearly everything nowadays, as far as video, is still 48 kilohertz. The good thing about this company is they did adopt the broadcast wave format about 2007 or 8. So it writes in wave files that are time stamped. So I can take these drives out and export them to a single drive, and they can be imported into Pro Tools or Nuendo or Digital Performer or whatever you're using, and they open right up as a session.
So you've got 5.4 tracks.
Yeah, and I sometimes rent a third machine for my backup, because what I basically have is I've got 72 tracks and 72 tracks of backup when I do that. Most of the work, I've never really had much that's reason to have more than 72 channels. And the console will allow me to do that many. And with outboard mic pre's, I can, even do a few more than that.
What is your board?
It's an AMEC.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, when I bought the radars, I really was at a point that it was time to retire the MCI. Sonically, it was a great sounding board. We'd gone through and modded it and, done a lot of really good modifications and changed all the op amps. And I mean, sonically, it was probably as good as you could get, but it was only 36 inputs, and 36 just wasn't making it. And it was a huge board. It took as much space as this, and it was only 36 inputs. So I started looking around for a console, and I didn't really feel like I wanted to jump into the digital boards. This was about 2001. There wasn't anything out there that was affordable that would do what I needed for doing live work. So I stayed with the analog format. Rupert Neve had told me about this console. He had done all the design work. These are his EQs, his filters, his mix box section, and they basically took one of their other boards that AMEC was making at the time and just incorporated all the Neve stuff into it. So, sonically, it's been a really great console. It still is. It works. I would like to have a few more features, but it's got dynamics on all the channels. It's got recall. It's automated. It does what I need to do, and it's 60 inputs.
Right, and you don't have to carry it anywhere.
No. And I don't know. I always think about, will I ever buy another, console? There's some things out there I would probably consider. But for right now, in my marketplace, for the clients that I'm working with, this works, and that format works perfect for a recording format.
Are you on the road a lot?
I was just going to ask the same thing.
I'm not on the road as much as I used to be, luckily.
Which is not a bad
thing. I mean, when we had the bus, we would get involved in people's tours that would be gone for 30, 40 days, and we would be gone for that long.
And your wife was working with you the whole time?
Sometimes, yeah. She wouldn't go off on those trips, but she would go off on some of them. And by then, we had a family started, so she was at home. But nowadays, I'm thankful I don't follow some band around the country on one night stands. I'm thankful I can get 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 days in one location, and then go on to the next job.
You travel all over the country.
Right.
Basically.
It doesn't happen as much as it used to because of fuel cost, and there's so many other options nowadays. And that's one thing that has really cut into the live truck market, audio-wise, has been the advent of so many digital audio consoles that PA companies use nowadays have recording capabilities built into them. So if you add a computer, you add some auxiliary equipment, your PA board is your recording console. The disadvantages to that are you don't really know exactly what you're getting, because you're trying to mix a live show. You're not trying to make a live recording. The live recording is just an extra incentive, and you have to put audience mics up. You have to do some other things to make it happen, but it is another alternative, and it's quite a bit cheaper than dragging a remote truck out.
What would you do when you would go out? Would you set up your own, or would you be pulling in stuff from their sound?
We would do both.
Really?
When we do live stuff, we've always done it that way. We've always carried a splitter system. We've always done some kind of isolated split between the PA and what we do. And then sometimes we'll put up our own microphones if they don't really have some microphones that are quite the caliber that we want. Or it depends a lot on the road show. Nowadays, most of the shows that I do that are live, the sound companies and the artists are big enough artists and acts that their equipment's is as good as what I'd put up. You know, their microphone selection is equally as good. And the other thing is, with so many bands now touring with in-ears, the entire system is based on what they used night after night. If we go in and put a lot of additional mics or different mics up, it changes the way they hear things. And so it becomes more of a conflict than a help. And so I usually don't put a lot of things up. You know, it depends on the job, it depends on what we're trying to capture, and a lot of it depends on the band and the road company. I mean, we try to be as invisible as we can when we go do these jobs, because we don't want to cause a conflict. We don't want to cause something they do every night not to function the same way. And so I try to be very invisible in what we do.
What does it take when you go in? I mean, how early do you have to be in?
Well, normally I try to arrive about 4 hours before a line check. So we'll try to arrive at the venue about the same time the PA company will. And, you know, if it's say a 9 o'clock show and it's in like the Irwin Center or it's, you know, some other venue, I'll usually be on site by 11 to get parked. And then a crew will arrive pretty short, you know, soon after that, because it normally takes us a good couple hours to run cable, do the interface with the sound company, you know, get cameras up, get everything situated, and then we'll try to be ready for a line check by 3, sometimes 4, and the band will come out if they're going to be there and give us a real sound check. We can get levels.
Do you do like a closed circuit monitor?
Yeah, we do. I usually put a couple cameras up, or if there's video going, we'll take a feed off them.
Right.
And sometimes we'll even put a camera up, because you don't always know the shot you're going to get.
Right.
Sometimes if I'm real fortunate, I'll get a router in here so I can pick all the camera shots.
Oh, right.
And that's always real handy, because that way I'll have 8 or 9 cameras I can sequence through and get the shot I want. And then we'll put our camera up just so we always know we've got the stage.
One overall.
You know, one that we know is going to be there. And normally the crew has always been about the same size. I've always gone out with myself and 2 to 3 other people. That's a good crew. When we're doing jobs in here, if I'm not engineering, there's always one person that's logging the times of and song order and keeping up with a rough mix CD. We usually burn a rough CD to give to the artist to have something to reference before they go back and listen to multi-tracks. If I'm here and not engineering, I'll be working with the engineer that's here, just kind of shadowing him, make sure everything is getting recorded. Because the mix that he creates, for the most part, is his mix. It may not be the final mix unless it's a broadcast, so it doesn't make any difference. I mean, he can do what he wants to.
Right, you'll still have it. Well,
and the important thing is that we've got a good, clean multi-track that they can go back and remix from. And then on stage, I always have at least one stage person that's on intercom and in communication with the live sound company. So if something happens, sometimes I'll hear something before they hear something, especially if it's in the middle of a big show and there's a lot going on. If there's one microphone that's got a bad cable or something's gone wrong with it, we can immediately contact them. They can change that. Or if they have a problem, a lot of times they'll call us and say, listen to that microphone. And it may be that I haven't heard it yet. Right. So it works out good. And then a third person might just be a swing person that is kind of there to be on stage, might be in the truck, and mainly around for the setup and tear down. And just to keep up with equipment, that's the big thing.
Right.
When you have a lot of equipment out, you want to make sure that you know where it is and you get it back. And you're the ones that wind the cables, you're the ones that pack the microphones and pack the truck.
Right.
Because it's easy for things to get damaged.
Do you bring folks back here for remix?
Sometimes, if we do the remix, most of the live things, I'd say out of all the work that I do, I doubt if I remix more than 25% of it. Most of it's a capture, and then it goes on from there. Right. The custom projects I'll work on all the way through, but if it's a one night or a broadcast or something like that, I probably won't see that remix.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Right.
You know, I get to record it and hand them masters and keep up and make sure they've got them opened, and then at some point I'll erase my masters and it's all theirs. The things that we usually do are the ACL Music Festival. I've been involved with that on and off for the last 7 or 8 years. I haven't done all of them, but I've done a lot of them. And you know, we've been fortunate to be on either the main stage or the second main stage. And then usually we'll record several things during South by. It's always a busy time of the year. And then I've got a couple of other things that happen pretty much like clockwork. I've been going down to the Houston Rodeo for 19 years now, recording all the music acts that perform at it. Every night after the rodeo performance, they have a stage that rolls out in the center of the stadium, and they do major acts, country, rock, R&B, you know, you name it. It's about 25 groups over the time of that. And then we do some broadcast things that are pretty seasonal, some 4th of July broadcasts that are scattered around. Most of them are in Houston for that. And then just stuff we pick up, you know, just it's kind of like it's always been. I mean, it's interesting business. I don't always, I get a lot of interns, you know, that come and visit me because of Texas State and UT and ACC that are always wanting to know about recording. And I always tell them, I said, you know, you've really got to have a love for doing live recording if that's what you want to do to try to make a living, because it's not something you're going to get rich with. You know, and you have to just be very careful about how you fund things and how you watch your, you know, your budgets and budget your income, knowing that there'll be very busy times and there'll be some times where there's nothing going on.
Right. I think you've been very successful.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate in that, and I've been real fortunate to be able to keep some great people to work with me. Greg's been working with me now for about 40 years, and there's a couple of other people that have, you know, been 10, 15, 20 years. And so everybody I've got are freelance, and they managed to always be able to make a living at what they do freelance, so they're kind of usually available to come back and work with me. And there's always the new guys. You know, I've been fortunate to find a lot of really key people out of some of the schools that I can hang on to for their school years and maybe for a few years afterwards until they, you know, take off and do what they want to do. I've been real fortunate to win a couple of Grammys out of the years, and we've worked on 13 projects that have been nominated and gotten 5 Grammys. Great. So it's always nice to have a few things like that pop up.
They had to.
Interesting. I never really planned on anything that I did. It just kind of happened. You know, I really never planned on going into recording as a career. I really thought I might be a teacher, a music teacher. That's kind of what I got my degree direction in, and I taught school while I was in college. I think somewhere in the latter years of school, I just decided that wasn't my thing. Right. You know, I taught school and I really enjoyed working with kids, but the music thing and making music and capturing music was the direction I wanted to go. And you know, luckily, you know, I just kind of was in Austin at the right time, and you know, the clients kind of came at the right time, and it was something that I'm glad I didn't try to make it in the studio business. Right. I don't think I would have ever made it. You know, I would have given up somewhere. You know, it was something that worked, and I was able to find some really great clients that kept me in work for a number of years. We got involved in a jazz program back about 87 that ended up being a 22-year project, a classic jazz program out of San Antonio that went international. And you know, we did about 500 shows over that time period. And now that series has been sold to Stanford University. It's going to be streamed till 2038. They bought all the shows and they've repackaged them. But it's a show called Riverwalk Jazz, Live from the Landing, and it was a cool show because we had a lot of, it featured the main band, which was Jim Cullum Jazz Band out of San Antonio. They had a club down on the Riverwalk for 40 some odd years, and so we taped most of the shows there. But they were done, the lady who was the producer of the show was Garrison Keillor's writer when he started Prairie Home Companion for the radio network. So her concept on doing radio shows were storytelling shows. So the jazz show, every show featured about 11 songs. It featured Jim's band, but we brought in guest artists who either were from that era of classic jazz or the current newbies that were the young people that were doing that style of music. So every show was a historical lesson on a genre or an artist or a writer or a musician from that period, and we would take live original recordings of those people, and we would do crossfades into Jim's band with the new artist, or we would do old radio playbacks, or we would do a lot of really cool little tidbits of stories and things that went on. So it was a great historical music, kind of a musicality show, and now Stanford has picked it up and they're going to use it like that. We were there the last month of Armadillo in, I think, 1980, 79, 80, right before it closed, and we recorded like 20 days of a lot of acts. I know they never got clearances on it, and they filmed it, videotaped it. Well, I know Ray Benson called me a few years ago and said, you'll never believe what happened. He said, this guy called me up, and he had been at an auction at some warehouse in Texas, and a bunch of 2-inch masters had shown up. And they were some of the masters that we recorded during that last days of Armadillo, and they were asleep at the wheel.
Did he get them?
And so the guy brought them, but he didn't have all of them. He only had a few. You know, there was like 2 nights and 12, 13 reels of tape, and he only had like 3 or 4. And Ray, you know, got the stuff, and I don't know if Ray could do anything with it other than maybe use some of the audio. There's stuff like that floating around, and I did a project with a guy at UT in the 80s when I had the bus, that we recorded a bunch of the early Austin acts, you know, like Plum Nelly, Alvin Crowe, you know, major acts at that time that were bouncing around Austin, and they were filmed. They were shot on film, 16 millimeter, and it was part of his graduate program project. And his backers pulled out on him, and I've still got the audio masters. They were all done on 8-track. And but the film masters all went to the wind, so no telling what happened to that.
Incredible archive.
Well, I don't really have very much because nearly everything I've done I give to the client.
Right.
Only the things I've been stuck with I still have. I had some stuff that I wished I had hung on to. Like we did some Stevie Ray Vaughn recordings that actually turned into albums, but we did some radio shows with him that he wasn't happy with. But we got paid for the masters, but the client never wanted the master. And I mean, there was probably some stuff there that if those had stayed intact, they would have been used, because everything he ever did has turned into something. I mean, the very first recordings that we ever did with him before anybody knew who he was for KLBJ. I was working on a radio show with a guy here in town that was program director, and we recorded Stevie Ray on a live radio show for KLBJ, and they ended up taking those masters 15 years later and released them as In the Beginning. Right. And they were the rough mixes that we did. And it was so funny because Wayne Bell, who's an audio guy here in town, does a lot of film work, kept all that stuff. And we had run some reel-to-reel 2-track that night, and it was such a low budget project, we didn't even have enough money to buy tape. And we ran a reel of tape on his show, and in the middle of the very last song, we ran out of tape in the song, and on the CD, it stops because they used it right up until the tail end. It's so funny. You listen to that CD, and right in the middle of this big jam, it's just, that's it. It's done. This summer, we're going to Houston for the 4th of July. Every summer, we do what they call Freedom Over Texas broadcast, which is a big fireworks show that the ABC affiliate out of Houston has been producing for about 20 years. Wow. And they're owned by Disney, so we actually get to work for Mickey Mouse. Our paycheck comes from Mickey Mouse. I get this check, has Mickey Mouse on the top. Cool. And this summer, the 2 musical acts are Martina McBride and Sheryl Crow. Cool. And then after they get through performing, they go into about a 30-minute fireworks show. And the interesting thing is it's done downtown in Bayou Park. So they do fireworks from 3 different locations, and they have about 200,000 people show up for this thing. I mean, literally all the downtown highways, people come and park on all the overpasses just to watch the fireworks show.
Right.
And we've been real fortunate. Maybe it won't rain this summer, but we've always been able to pull it off. It's actually rained a little bit, but by the time the fireworks happen, it's dry enough to see the show. And so anyhow, we've got that happening this summer.
Well, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Greg, wait a minute. I'm talking to somebody here. Hang on. Okay.
So the first song, after all of the housekeeping stuff, that's sound check.
Okay.
So that will be sound check. I'll make sure.
And Greg's going to be there.
I'll make sure if you're good. After that, then we'll go in.
And we're rolling from then on.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about any of this pre-stuff at all.
Do you have mics? You have the mics up and going?
The mics are all up.
So if everything is up, then I'd rather just go straight in.
Well, we haven't heard the choir at all.
Didn't?
No, they never sang.
All right. So the first song.
We need to hear the choir, and we need to hear at least one of the soloists, because we haven't heard anybody sing.
Somebody will be on that mic anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we need to hear them sing into it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Do you want me to roll on those?
No.
Okay.
We're not gonna roll any of this.
Okay.
And we won't roll till we really start rolling.
How are we doing?
I'll get you closer. Yeah, let's do one more. We're rolling.
Just the top CD.
Yep.
Okay.
Sing tonight. Sing songs which stand on the unfailing word of God. Come on, let's tell it again. Lift up his gate. And his courts with majesty. Give it to him, praise. He is worthy. All the other sing to him. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord. He's worthy of the praise. Thanks unto the Lord. He's worthy. That's what we came to do. I know somebody came for a recording, but we came to give God praise. We came to have church. Is it okay if we just have church?
Thank you, Malcolm. We're probably going to head out in a minute.
Okay.
How often do you eat cold pizza?
Thanksgiving. Anybody come with
every time.
Thanksgiving?
Thank y'all.
Nice to meet you.
You too. You too. You've had fun.